Hello, dear listener. Today, I invite you to reflect on how the role of parents is changing in the modern world and why. Sometimes, in our desire to help, we ourselves become an obstacle to our children's development. How can we maintain a balance between care and freedom, between authority and trust? Where is the fine line between support and control? And how can we avoid crossing it so as not to destroy the fragile relationship between generations? We will talk about why it is so important to be aware of our expectations and fears, about the influence of our actions and words on the formation of a child's personality, and about how to build a dialogue where everyone is heard and accepted. Together, we will try to look at the complex aspects of parenting from different angles in order to find a path to harmony and mutual understanding. So let's begin. Every family is part of a broader cultural and historical context that shapes not only habits, but also deep-rooted parenting scenarios. Traditions, religious norms, ethnic characteristics, and family attitudes are passed down from generation to generation, becoming a kind of framework in which a child grows up. These patterns can be both a support and an obstacle. On the one hand, cultural values give a sense of belonging and rootedness, teach respect for elders, and encourage appreciation for work and family ties. They create a foundation for personality development and help preserve identity and moral values. On the other hand, these same traditions sometimes impose restrictions, give rise to stereotypes and taboos that hinder the child's free development and expression of their individuality. Family scenarios can include both the wisdom of ancestors and unhealed traumas that are repeated in the form of prohibitions, fears, and unresolved conflicts. For example, in some cultures, openness of feelings may be considered a weakness, and the desire for independence may be seen as disrespectful to elders. In such conditions, children learn to hide their true emotions, suppress their desires, and choose the right behavior, which over time can lead to internal conflict and difficulties in building relationships. It is important to be able to recognize which traditions truly serve development and support, and which become psychological blocks. A conscious attitude toward family scenarios allows us to preserve valuable heritage while freeing up space for personal growth and freedom. This requires respect for our roots, but also a willingness to rethink outdated attitudes so as not to repeat the mistakes of the past, and to create healthier and more vibrant relationships within the family. How confused roles hinder development and spoil dialogue between generations? When a parent confuses roles, for example, striving to be one of the gang in the eyes of their child, or conversely, taking on the image of a strict commander, it rarely seems like a problem at the time. Everything seems logical. I want him to trust me. Or conversely, children must obey and respect. But in the long run, it is precisely such extremes that destroy both the child's personality development and dialogue between generations. If a parent becomes a friend at the expense of their adult role, they lose the boundary of responsibility. A friend does not set boundaries, does not correct the course, does not take on the role of a leader. As a result, the child grows up without a clear hierarchy, and when faced with difficulties, is not ready to solve them. As American psychotherapist Ross Green notes, children don't need equals. They need stable adults who can withstand their chaos. Indulgence is often disguised as freedom, but in essence, it deprives the child of the opportunity to learn from adult experience. At the same time, if a parent plays the role of boss, they suppress initiative, individuality, and emotional freedom. The child learns to guess the mood, to be convenient, not to take risks, and over time loses touch with themselves. Eric from wrote, "A person is not born free. They become free when conditions are created where they can think, feel, and choose. The authoritarian model kills this opportunity at its root." The main problem with both extremes is the loss of genuine contact. When an adult is afraid of being rejected or, conversely, afraid of losing control, they cease to be themselves. And then the child, sensing this inauthenticity, distances themselves. Not necessarily physically. Often it is emotional deafness, when they seem to be talking but not listening. Different parenting styles. How your choice affects your kid's personality. Parenting style isn't just a set of rules, but a living thing that shapes your kid's character and inner world. Each style has certain values, expectations, and, importantly, consequences. Let's check out the main approaches and how they work. The authoritarian style is based on strict control and unconditional obedience. Discipline, order, and clear boundaries are important here, and the child's opinion is often not taken into account. This approach can provide a sense of security through stability, but it often leads to the suppression of initiative, the development of fear of making mistakes, and a decrease in self-esteem. The child learns to obey, but does not always understand why, and as a result may either withdraw into themselves or look for ways to break through the prohibitions. The democratic style is an attempt to combine respect for the child with the need for rules. Here, dialogue and explanations play an important role. The child hears not only what to do, but also why. This approach promotes the development of responsibility, independence, and confidence. However, it requires emotional stability and time from parents to listen, discuss, and support. The permissive style manifests itself in an excess of freedom, when parents avoid restrictions and control. The child feels free, but at the same time may experience a lack of boundaries necessary for a sense of security. This often leads to difficulties with self-control and difficulties in adapting to external demands. Without structured guidelines, it is difficult to build a stable sense of self. The intuitive style is less formalized and is based on attention to the child's internal needs and flexibility. Parents try to sense the child's mood and state of mind, do not impose strict boundaries, and help the child navigate their own emotions and desires. This approach can develop emotional competence, but it requires a high level of emotional maturity on the part of adults to avoid descending into chaos or uncertainty. Each of these styles forms a different foundation for personality. A healthy psyche and sense of self often develop where clear boundaries and the opportunity for free expression are combined, where the child feels safe, but at the same time has space for experimentation and mistakes, where the adult is not a ruler, but a companion who respects uniqueness but knows how to guide. Understanding your own style and its influence is the first step toward consciously choosing what we want to pass on to our children and how to help them become full-fledged and free personalities. Emotional closeness and distance. Finding a balance between openness and boundaries. The relationship between parents and children is a delicate game between closeness and separation, between openness and protection. Emotional closeness is a bridge over which trust, mutual understanding, and support flow. But at the same time, every person needs their own personal space, emotional distance where they can be themselves without constant external influence. For many parents, expressing their feelings is not an easy task. This is because their own experience may not have included a model of open emotional dialogue. Instead of talking about their fears, anxieties, or joys, they're accustomed to suppressing their emotions or expressing them through criticism and control. Such emotional restraint breeds misunderstanding. The child feels coldness and distance, while the parent feels alienation and irritation. On the other hand, there are parents who strive for excessive closeness, unable or afraid to set boundaries. They tend to be overprotective, constantly interfering in their child's life, trying to protect them from any pain or mistakes. But the absence of boundaries breeds anxiety and confusion. The child cannot learn independence and responsibility because they do not feel their own freedom. The balance lies in recognizing that emotional closeness and distance are not mutually exclusive concepts, but complementary ones. It's like breathing, inhaling and exhaling. A parent who knows how to not only listen and accept, but also set clear boundaries with respect, creates the conditions for the healthy development of the child. An important element is the ability to express one's feelings in an accessible and honest way, not through accusations or demands, but through I statements. For example, "It's hard for me when you leave without saying anything instead of 'you're ignoring me.'" This helps the child understand the inner world of an adult and develops emotional literacy. It is also worth remembering that what is left unsaid often speaks louder than words. Silence, restraint, or hidden resentment create tension that children sense intuitively, even if they do not understand the reason for it. Therefore, developing emotional dialogue skills is not only about words, but also about observing oneself, one's reactions, and the ability to accept one's own emotions. Finding balance is a process that requires patience, practice, and a desire to be honest with yourself and your child. It is precisely in this balance that true closeness is born, where there is room for support, freedom, and growth on both sides. Age-related dynamics in parent-child relationships, the development of roles and expectations. The relationship between parent and child is not a static structure, but a living process that changes with the age and maturation of the child. Each stage requires a different approach and maturity from the parent, and the ability to adapt to new needs becomes the key to harmony and mutual understanding. At an early age, a child is completely dependent on adults. They seek safety, stability, and protection. Parents act as a support system, creating a space where children can develop peacefully. At this stage, warm care, sensitivity, and predictability are important. Young children are not yet able to regulate their emotions and behavior, so they need clear boundaries and support. With the transition to adolescence, the dynamics of the relationship also change. Teenagers strive for independence and want to be heard and respected as individuals. Here, the role of the parent shifts from guardian to mentor, who respects the child's freedom but remains close by, offering support and advice. Conflicts and withdrawal at this age are a natural part of the growing up process. They show that the child is learning to set their own boundaries and express their individuality. It is important for parents to remain open and patient, allowing the teenager to find themselves and accept their mistakes. When a child becomes an adult, the role of parents transforms into that of partners. The adult child and adult parent begin to build a relationship based on mutual respect, dialogue, and trust. Parents no longer control, but share their experience, offer support, and remain an important resource. Understanding that everyone is an independent person capable of making decisions frees both sides from conflict and tension. Thus, the role of a parent must grow along with the child, changing from protector to partner. This requires flexibility, the ability to listen and let go, giving space for development. Parents who accept this dynamic build more mature, harmonious relationships that contribute to the development of the child's personality and maintain closeness throughout life. Parental ego and its influence on upbringing. Internal barriers to understanding. Parental ego often becomes an invisible but powerful player in the relationship with the child. It manifests itself in the belief that we know what is best for them, and that our task is to guide, correct, and ensure that the child lives up to our hopes and ambitions. Often these attitudes look like this: he must be successful so that I can be proud. Let them not repeat my mistakes. I know what is best for them. But behind these words may lie not so much love as fear, pride, or unawareness. When the parental ego takes the dominant position, parenting becomes an attempt to control the child's life, to impose our ideas of what is right and successful on them. This approach often gives rise to internal resistance and conflict. The child feels not freedom of choice, but the pressure of expectations, loses touch with their own desires, and feels like a tool for satisfying their parents' ambitions. The ego pushes them to compare. Why is your friend already doing better in school? But you're not. You have to be better than me, otherwise I will fail. These attitudes generate feelings of guilt in the child and disappointment in the parent. Instead of support, there is constant stress and tension in the relationship. It is important to realize that love and ego are different things. Love accepts the child as they are, respects their individuality and their right to make mistakes. The ego, on the other hand, is afraid of losing control and recognition. It needs to confirm its own value through the child's successes. It is possible to overcome the interference of the ego through awareness. Ask yourself questions such as, what do I really want for my child? Is this my dream or theirs? Will I be able to love them if they go their own way? Such internal dialogue helps shift the focus from control to acceptance and support. Ultimately, rejecting the dictates of the ego opens the way to genuine dialogue and trusting relationships, where the child feels free to be themselves and the parent feels calm and joyful about their growth. The role of shame and guilt in parenting. How to avoid destroying trust and maintain warmth in relationships. Shame and guilt are powerful emotional reactions that are often used as parenting tools in families. However, their constant use can have deeply destructive consequences. Phrases such as, "You're embarrassing me," "I haven't slept at night because of you," or "What will people say?" are often used by parents as a way to show the seriousness of the situation, discipline the child, and convey important lessons. But behind these words lies not only anxiety, but also a powerful message. The child becomes a hostage to the emotions and expectations of others, and their personal space and inner security are threatened. When parenting is based on guilt and shame, the child begins to perceive love as conditional. I am loved when I don't make mistakes. I am valuable when I live up to expectations. This creates an internal conflict. On the one hand, the need for recognition and acceptance, and on the other, the fear of disappointing and being rejected. This climate breeds anxiety, withdrawal, and, in the future, difficulties with self-acceptance and building trusting relationships. Healthy boundaries in parenting are not about fear and manipulation, but about respect and responsibility. It is important to separate behavior from personality. Criticism should be directed at actions, not at the child's character or value. Instead of accusations, it is better to talk about your feelings and needs. For example, "I was very upset that you didn't tell me about your grade," instead of "You are embarrassing me with your bad grades." This approach preserves the emotional connection and does not destroy trust. Conscious parenting requires parents to learn to listen and see their child as a person with their own experiences and mistakes. It is important to create a space where the child can openly talk about their feelings without fear of being judged. This is the foundation for developing inner security and healthy self-esteem. To stop parenting through guilt means to move to a dialogue based on mutual respect and love. This does not mean abandoning rules and requirements, but learning to express them in such a way that the child does not feel guilty, but understands the meaning and value of their actions. This approach helps to restore warmth and sincerity to the relationship and forms a mature personality capable of self-reflection and responsibility without internal destruction. Parenting and control over the future. How to let go of fear and learn to support without imposing. For many parents, thinking about their child's future is a source of anxiety and a desire to control every step and every decision, as if this were the only way to protect them from possible failures and dangers. This is natural. Fear of the unknown, of the unpredictable, of the fact that a child may encounter difficulties, causes us to tighten the noose of control ever tighter. We want to protect, guide, and ensure that they stay on track and achieve success. However, this strong impulse often causes tension and conflict. When a parent tries to predict and control their child's future, they unwittingly take away their freedom. Every person's life is a series of uncertainties and choices, and it is precisely the opportunity to make mistakes and learn from them that shapes maturity and personal growth. The fear of losing control leads to the child losing confidence in themselves and their abilities because decisions are made for them in advance. In such a situation, it is important to learn to let go. Letting go does not mean indifference or neglect. On the contrary, it is the ability to support while maintaining respect for the child's independence. It is as if you planted a tree. You cannot control how its branches will grow, but you can provide good soil, timely watering, and protection from pests. Your task is to create the conditions, not to write the script. Support without taking over their life means paying attention to the child's needs, being able to listen and accept their choices, even if they seem risky or incomprehensible. It is trusting that when faced with difficulties, the child will find the strength and resources within themselves to solve them. The parent becomes not a dictator, but a partner on the journey, always ready to help, but not interfering with the child's path. In practice, this requires awareness, noticing your fears, distinguishing where control is necessary for safety and where it is just a manifestation of anxiety. Talk openly with your child about your feelings. Explain that you are there for them and ready to support them at any moment. Such honesty creates a foundation of trust and inner peace. By letting go of control over the future, parents learn to trust life and their child. It is not an easy path, full of doubts and struggles with one's own anxieties. But it is in this letting go that true strength is revealed. The strength to love and accept another person as free and whole. Emotional intelligence in the family. The foundation of mutual understanding and trust. One of the most important aspects of harmonious relationships between parents and children is the development of emotional intelligence. The ability to recognize, understand, and express one's feelings, as well as empathize with others. In the family, this skill is formed primarily through the example of adults, their ability to honestly and calmly share their experiences and listen to the child's feelings without judgment. Often, parents focus on external indicators of success, grades, behavior, achievement of goals, forgetting that the ability to name one's emotions, understand their nature and causes is no less important, and sometimes even more important. A child who has learned to say, "I'm upset because I wasn't heard," rather than simply, "I'm angry," gains the key to managing their experiences. This relieves tension, prevents conflicts, and strengthens trust. By demonstrating their own emotional intelligence, parents become not just mentors to their children, but living examples. Their calmness in moments of irritation, their ability to acknowledge vulnerability and seek compromise show that feelings are a natural part of life, not a cause for shame or punishment. This attitude helps children develop healthy self-esteem and emotional maturity. Instead of suppressing emotions or demanding that children control themselves, it is important to create a space where children feel safe to openly express their inner world. This means not only talking about feelings, but also actively listening, asking questions, and helping children understand what lies behind their emotions. Ultimately, emotional intelligence is not just a skill, but the foundation for building genuine, deep relationships where everyone feels heard and accepted. In a family where such understanding reigns, children grow up not only successful, but also happy, capable of compassion and mutual support. Parental mistakes. How acknowledgement and sincerity become a bridge to trust. Mistakes in parenting are not a sentence or an indicator of incompetence, but an inevitable part of the living human process. Parents are not robots. They learn just like children, often from their own mistakes and misunderstandings. Admitting your mistake to your child is not a weakness, but a sign of maturity and sincerity, which create the foundation for a strong and trusting relationship. When an adult says to a child, "I was wrong," or "I'm sorry, I was wrong," they demonstrate that no one is immune to mistakes and that what matters is not what happened, but how we respond to it. This teaches the child honesty, responsibility, and the ability to accept their mistakes without fear or shame. Instead of building relationships on ideals and hypocrisy, the family becomes a place where you can be real with flaws and vulnerabilities. Many parents fear that admitting a mistake will undermine their authority. However, the opposite happens. The child sees that their opinion and feelings are important, that they are perceived as a full-fledged partner in communication. Such dialogue becomes a bridge connecting hearts, rather than a wall of misunderstanding and resentment. A real-life example. When a mother apologizes for her harsh tone or wrong decision, the child feels supported and secure, learns to trust and open up. Instead of hiding their mistakes, parents turn them into lessons that bring the family closer together and strengthen it. Admitting a mistake is an invitation to dialogue and mutual growth. It is a step towards mutual understanding, which teaches us to value not perfection, but sincerity and love, which can overcome any difficulties. Parenting in an era of change. Digital children and analog parents. In our rapidly changing world, parents often feel that their children have grown up in a different reality, one that is digital, instantaneous, and saturated with new meanings and forms of communication. There's a gap between the analog experience of parents and the virtual worlds of children, as if they live on different banks of the same river and speak different languages. This creates a difficulty in understanding, which sometimes gives rise to mistrust, anxiety, and a feeling of alienation. Generation Z and Alpha are growing up in an environment of constant information flow, social media, gamification, and instant feedback. For them, technology is not just a tool, but a natural environment for communication, creativity, and self-identification. The values of these generations are often skewed toward freedom of expression, rapid change, and global interaction. At the same time, parents who grew up in a more traditional world rely on stability, consistency, and personal example. The language gap is not just a technical issue, but a deep problem of perception. A parent may perceive a child's constant use of a smartphone as detachment, irresponsibility, or even rebellion, while the child sees it as a way to create social connections, seek support, and express themselves. This difference leads to misunderstanding and conflict. To build bridges rather than walls, you need to learn to see the world through your child's eyes. This means not only knowing what apps they use, but also understanding what lies behind their interests, fears, and aspirations. It is important to ask questions without judging, and to listen with genuine interest to what is important to them and why. This approach helps not only to establish contact, but also to discover new meanings together. It is important for parents to accept that children change along with the world, and that this is not a threat, but an opportunity to broaden their own horizons. Learning new things together is a way to stay connected, to become a friend and mentor at the same time, while maintaining respect for the child's individuality. Ultimately, the digital age offers not just challenges, but new horizons for dialogue, mutual growth, and understanding. Building bridges between the analog and the digital is the way to strengthen the family and create a space where everyone feels heard and accepted. Parental maturation, the transition from control to acceptance and new forms of closeness. Understanding that a child has grown up and is becoming an independent person is often a serious challenge for parents. This is the moment when the old roles, mentor, protector, decision maker for the child, begin to change, and a new dynamic of relationships takes their place. However, it can be difficult to accept this. There's a voice inside that still wants to guide and protect, because fear for the future and the desire to help remain strong. In this transition, it is important to realize that a child's growing up is not a loss of control, but a gain in trust. Stopping interfering does not mean abandoning them to their fate, but giving them the opportunity to learn from their own mistakes and successes. A parent who controls the situation risks stifling initiative and independence, creating emotional distance, and provoking resistance. Maintaining closeness in new roles requires parents to change their perspective. Now you're not only a mentor, but also a witness to life who respects choices, even if they do not match your expectations. This position opens up space for sincere conversations and mutual respect, strengthening the bond based on trust rather than control. This stage of parental maturation is a time to rethink yourself, to accept new boundaries and new ways of showing love. It is the ability to be there without imposing yourself, to listen without judgment, and to support when it is really needed. It is the path from the desire to control to the art of being a support. Understanding and accepting your child's maturation helps you as a parent to open up, become wiser and freer, and your relationship deeper and more vibrant. This process takes time, patience, and inner work, but is what makes a family stronger and more harmonious. Mindful parenting practices, from theory to life. The theory of mindful parenting is a valuable foundation, but it only acquires real meaning in practice, in daily actions and decisions. How can we ensure that mindfulness becomes not just an abstract idea, but a living tool in our relationship with our child? Consistency, regularity, and simplicity are important here. allowing you to incorporate practices into your usual rhythm of life. One of the basic exercises is keeping a diary of expectations. This helps parents realize what expectations they project onto their child and what fears and hopes lie behind them. By writing down thoughts and feelings, it is possible to separate one's own desires from the child's needs, as well as to see how realistic and useful these expectations are. This practice promotes inner honesty and reduces pressure on the relationship. Another effective method is family conversations based on rules. It is important that these conversations take place in an atmosphere of respect and openness, without accusations or pressure. The rules can be simple. Everyone talks only about themselves, listens without interrupting, does not criticize, and expresses feelings through I statements. These guidelines create a safe space for dialogue in which the child and parent learn to listen to each other, understand each other's motives, and seek joint solutions. The 3 questions method is a simple but powerful tool for daily communication. The parent asks the child 3 questions: what did you accomplish today? What was difficult? And how can I help? Such questions focus attention on the positive, acknowledge difficulties, and provide support without judging or imposing one's opinion. This develops a sense of support and confidence in the child and the ability to be there without pressure in the parent. In addition, it is useful to practice mindful presence, the ability to be here and now with your child, noticing their emotions and reactions without being distracted by gadgets or household chores. Simple moments, a walk together, a game, reading, become valuable time filled with attention and understanding. Implementing such practices requires patience and a willingness to change. But it is precisely systematic and conscious work on relationships that allows them to become deeper, more sincere, and healthier. It is important to remember that mindfulness is not a goal, but a path that helps parents and children grow together, opening up new facets of mutual understanding and love. So what should you do? How can you find balance in your parenting? Finding the golden mean between strictness and softness is not a theoretical task, but a practical one. It is not a once-and-for-all decision, but a constant internal process. And in this process, it is important to take into account not only the child's behavior, but also your own automatic responses, beliefs, and wounds. 1. Separate love from control. Love is unconditional acceptance, while control is an attempt to protect by imposing. Before intervening, ask yourself, am I acting out of love or fear? This is a simple but honest internal filter. 2. Set boundaries with respect. A boundary is not a shout or an ultimatum. It is a calm but firm, I will not allow this, backed up by logic and care. A boundary should be clear, predictable, and explained. It is not about punishment but about guidelines. 3. Practice active listening. Children, especially teenagers, speak in code. The phrase, "you don't understand anything," may hide the following: I'm afraid. It's important to me that you are there for me. Listen not only to the words, but also to the tone, pauses, and emotions. 4. Develop dialogue, not interrogation. Instead of, where were you? What were you doing? Why didn't you say anything? Try, it's important for me to understand what's going on with you. Do you want to talk about it? Interest, not control, is the key to trust. 5. Learn to apologize. If you lost your temper, went too far, or were unfair, admit it. I'm sorry, I overreacted. It's important for me that you know I'm learning with you. This will not weaken your authority. It will give your child a model of maturity. 6. Be consistent. A child's psyche seeks stability. When a parent is emotionally unpredictable, affectionate today, angry tomorrow, the child develops anxious attachment. Try to maintain your inner balance. You don't have to be perfect, just be predictable. 7. Reflect emotions with words. If a child is angry, don't interrupt them with "don't yell." Instead, say, "I can see you're angry. That's okay. Let's figure out what caused it." This helps them learn to understand their feelings. Finding balance does not mean standing in the middle between softness and harshness. It means being alive, attentive, and present. And remember, you are not controlling your child. You are accompanying them as they grow up. And in this accompaniment, It is important to be human, not perfect. The role of a parent is not to be perfect. It is to be alive and present, to walk alongside, not ahead with orders, and not behind with indulgence. True parenting is parenting with love and responsibility at the same time. It is not a game of authority or sympathy, but the profound art of being there. Relationships are not built on fear or permissiveness. They grow where there is respect, attention, and clear guidelines. And if we learn to find this balance, our children will grow up not just grateful. They will be internally whole and capable of healthy relationships. How do you perceive your role as a parent? What is more difficult for you, to be strict or to let go? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience is important. After all, it is from such reflections that a new, more mature generation is born. Thank you for being with us today. Your insights matter to us, and reading your comments truly inspires and motivates us. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with others. Your support allows us to keep creating meaningful content to inform and inspire. Thanks for watching, and we can't wait to see you in the next video. We'll be very grateful for your feedback. We will work on the comments, and positive feedback will inspire us to continue creating useful content for you.